Have you ever stood at the edge of the ocean at night and felt as though you were standing on the shore of history itself? That if you listened closely enough, past the whisper of the waves, you could hear the echoes of forgotten worlds. Tonight, we begin a journey to those worlds. We will walk the silent streets of cities that now lie sleeping beneath the sea, and we will listen to the stories they still have to tell. Before we begin our descent, we invite you to share a thought with us in the comments below. Is there a lost place, real or imagined, that has always called to you? A ruin you've dreamed of, or a piece of history you wish could be remembered? We would love to read about the worlds you wonder about. And if you wish to join us for the full voyage through these sunken realms, do consider subscribing. It is the gentlest way to ensure you don't miss a single chapter of our story. Now, find your place of rest. Let the noise of the day recede like a distant tide. Our journey is about to begin. Close your eyes, let the world outside you fade. Close your eyes, let the world outside you fade into a gentle hum, a distant murmur that has no need for your attention. Here, in this space between waking and sleeping, there is another shore waiting for you. It is not a place of grand drama or urgent news. It is a place of stillness, a place of quiet beginnings. You are traveling back, not through years or decades, but through the deep, slow-turning millennia. Further back than the Gilded Age of Athens, further back than the epic poems of Troy, back to a time when the world was younger, and the sea was a different shape. You are coming to rest in a city that slept beside the sea. Its name, if we must give it one, is Pavlopetri, but its inhabitants knew it simply as home. Your awareness returns to you not as a jolt, but as a slow tide of sensation. The first thing you feel is the air. It is cool and soft, carrying on it the faintest scent of salt and wild herbs. It drifts through an open window, a simple square of blue sky carved from a thick stone wall. You are lying on a pallet of woven reeds and soft wool, the kind of bed that has held generations of sleep. The stone beneath you is ancient, holding the deep, settled cold of the earth, but the morning sun is now beginning to warm the surfaces it can touch. A single golden beam of light angles into the room, illuminating a universe of dancing dust motes, each one a tiny world turning in the stillness. There is no sound but the whisper of the breeze, and far away, the gentle, rhythmic sigh of the sea. It is a sound so constant, so fundamental to this place, that it is the same as silence. It is the city's heartbeat. You rise slowly, your bare feet finding the cool, smooth flagstones of the floor. The room is simple, honest. A large clay pot, a pithos, stands in the corner, its surface decorated with swirling lines that mimic the waves. It holds cool water, fresh from the community well. Beside it, a wooden loom stands patient and waiting, its threads halfway through a pattern of blue and white, the colors of the sky and the sea foam. This is a house built for life, for work, for shelter. It is not large, but it feels safe, enclosed by walls of stone that your own ancestors may have placed one on top of the other. You walk to the window and look out. Below, a narrow street of packed earth and flat stones winds its way between other houses, all built of the same honey-colored stone, their roofs flat and ready to catch the precious rain. Everything is built to last. Everything is built in harmony with the land and the water. From here, you can see the edge of the city, where the houses give way to the gentle slope of a hill, covered in the dark green of olive trees and the grey-green of fragrant thyme. And beyond that you can see the water. It is a shade of blue so deep and pure it feels like you could drink it. Today it is calm, a vast sheet of polished lapis lazuli, its surface wrinkled only by the caress of the morning breeze. It does not crash against the city, it breathes against it. The city of Pavlopetri was not built in defiance of the sea, but in conversation with it. The waterfront is not a fortified wall, but a gentle slope, a series of wide, welcoming quays and stone docks where the water laps just a few feet below. This is the city's main thoroughfare, its source of life. The sea is a neighbor, a provider, a road to other places, but it is not yet a threat. Its power is respected, but its closeness is a blessing. The water level is lower now, in this ancient time. The coastline you know from maps is a phantom of a distant future. Here the land extends further, embracing the bay, creating a sheltered harbor where boats can rest safely. The streets of the city run down to this harbor, not ending abruptly at a cliff's edge, but continuing, some of them slipping directly into the clear, shallow water, designed for boats to be pulled right up to a merchant's door. You dress in a simple tunic of undyed linen, its rough texture a familiar comfort against your skin. You step out of the cool darkness of your home into the growing warmth of the morning. The air is already alive with new smells. The sharp, clean scent of wood smoke from a neighbor's hearth, the rich aroma of baking bread, the ever-present perfume of salt and drying seaweed. The city is waking up, not with a roar, but with a slowly rising murmur. From a nearby courtyard, you hear the low voices of women talking as they grind grain, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of stone on stone, a part of the morning's music. Children's laughter spills out from an open doorway, light and carefree. This is a city of courtyards, shared spaces hidden within the blocks of houses, where families live and work together. These are the hearts of the community, where news is shared, where food is prepared, where the bonds of kinship are woven as tightly as the threads on the loom in your room. You begin to walk, your steps finding the familiar paths. The streets are not a rigid grid, but an organic network that follows the contours of the land. They are wide enough for a cart to pass, for people to walk side by side. You pass a potter's workshop, the door open to the street. Inside, a man sits at a low wheel, his hands slick with wet clay. With a steady, patient pressure, he coaxes a shapeless lump into a graceful cup. His movements are fluid, economical, a dance of creation he has performed thousands of times. The shelves around him are filled with his finished work, plates, bowls, and tall amphorae waiting to be filled with olive oil or wine. Some are plain, others are decorated with octopus and fish, a celebration of the sea that sustains them all. His work will be used in the homes of this city, but some of it, the finest pieces, will be loaded onto the ships in the harbour and traded with people from islands you can only see on the clearest of days. Further on, you come to more open space, a public square. Here the buildings are larger, more imposing. One has a series of rooms that archaeologists of the future will identify as an administrative complex, a place where the city's affairs are managed. Today it is simply the place where elders meet. Their voices are low drone from within, discussing the allocation of land, the repair of the main well, the settling of a dispute between fishermen. It is all done with a slow, deliberate gravity. There is no king here, no palace, just a community governing itself through tradition and consensus. Life is too interconnected, too dependent on cooperation, for it to be any other way. Everyone knows their role. The farmer depends on the fisherman on the potter on the weaver. The city is a single organism, each person a vital cell. Your walk takes you towards the harbour, the vibrant, beating heart of Pavlopetri. The sounds grow louder here, but they are not harsh. It is the sound of purposeful activity. The hollow knock of wood on wood as a shipwright repairs a hull, the creak of ropes as a sail is hoisted. The rhythmic chanting of men as they haul a heavy net, gleaming with silver fish, onto the stone quay. The nets themselves are a work of art, woven with a skill passed down through generations. They lie in great brown piles, exuding a sharp, salty smell. Tiny lead weights are expertly tied along their bottoms, a sign of a sophisticated understanding of how to make the net sink true and fast in the currents. Fishermen, their skin tanned to the color of old leather by a lifetime of sun and sea spray, men tears with bone needles, their fingers moving with a deftness that belies their callous strength. You watch as a trading ship prepares to depart. It is larger than the local fishing boats, its hull deeper, its single square sail patched and stained from many voyages. Men are loading it with the city's wealth, not gold, but things far more valuable for life. Great clay jars, the pithy, are carefully lowered into the hold, each one filled with the golden green olive oil pressed from the groves that blanket the surrounding hills. Sacks of grain, woven baskets of dried figs, and blocks of the famous local obsidian, a volcanic glass sharper than any metal, are stowed alongside. This obsidian, mined from the island of Milos, is a sign of the city's reach, its connection to a wider world. This ship might be bound for Crete, or for the mainland, or for other small island settlements that dot this ancient sea. It carries a piece of Pavlopetri with it, and when it returns, it will bring back different pottery, new tools and stories from beyond the horizon. For now, the sea is a bridge, not a barrier. You find a place to sit on a low stone wall at the edge of the water, watching the life of the harbour unfold. The water is so clear you can see the bottom. Small fish dart among the submerged stones and the waving fronds of seagrass. You can see the foundations of the buildings that stand right at the water's edge, the stones descending into the depths. The city does not end at the shore. It simply transitions. It is a partially amphibious place. A small boat, a simple dugout canoe, glides past, paddled by a young boy. He is not fishing, just exploring, learning the ways of the water that will one day be his livelihood. He waves and you wave back. There is a slowness to the day, a lack of hurry. The sun, climbing higher in the sky, dictates the rhythm. When it is at its zenith, the city will fall quiet as people retreat into the shade of their homes and courtyards for a midday meal and a period of rest. The heat of noon settles over Pavlopetri like a warm blanket. The bright, sharp light of the morning softens into a hazy, shimmering glare. The sounds of the harbor diminish. The shipwright lays down his adze. The voices from the marketplace fade. The only persistent sounds are the buzzing of bees in the thyme and the ceaseless, gentle wash of the waves. You retreat into the cool interior of a home, perhaps your own. The thick stone walls insulate you from the heat. Lunch is simple. A piece of hard, crusty bread, a handful of black olives slick with oil, a slice of sharp goat's cheese, and a cup of cool water from the large jar in the corner. It is a meal of the earth and the sun, its flavors clean and strong. In this quiet hour, you can feel the true character of the city. It is a place of profound and ancient peace. It has stood here for centuries, perhaps longer. Generations have been born, have lived their lives, and have been laid to rest in the small stone-lined cist grave that lie in a quiet field just beyond the city's edge. You can see it in your mind's eye, a small, sacred precinct, separate from the world of the living but still a part of the community. The dead are not forgotten, they are simply sleeping in the earth, just as the city itself sleeps in the heat of the midday sun. This continuity, this unbroken line stretching back into the past, is the source of the city's strength. It is built on memory, on the accumulated wisdom of knowing how to live in this specific place, how to read the sky for weather, how to understand the moods of the sea, how to plant the olive trees so they catch the best sun, how to build a house that will stand for 100 years. This knowledge is not written in books. It is etched into the landscape and into the daily habits of the people. As the sun begins its slow descent towards the western horizon, the city stirs again. A new breeze picks up, cooler this time, coming directly off the sea. It rustles the leaves of the olive trees and brings the scent of the deep water with it. The light softens, turning from white gold to a warm, honeyed yellow. The shadows lengthen, stretching out like dark fingers across the streets and squares. This is the most social time of day. Families emerge from their homes. The courtyards fill once more with conversation. You walk again, and the atmosphere has changed. The urgency of morning work has been replaced by the leisure of the evening. Down at the harbor, the fishing boats are returning. You see them first as small specks on the horizon, growing steadily larger as they ride the gentle evening swells towards home. Their arrival is a daily ritual. People gather on the quays to watch. There is no formal market, just a communal sharing. The catch is brought ashore in wide, shallow baskets. Silver sea bream, red mullet, squid, and the occasional octopus. The air fills with the fresh, briny smell of the sea's bounty. The fish are distributed among the families, a portion for the fishermen who risked the sea, a portion for the boat builder, a portion for the community. It is a system built on trust and mutual support. Tonight, every family will eat well. You watch as a grandfather teaches his grandson how to clean a fish with a sharp flake of obsidian. His hands, gnarled and scarred, move with unpracticed efficiency, while the boy's small fingers fumble to copy him. It is a quiet moment of teaching, of knowledge passing from one generation to the next. This is how the city endures. Not through stone walls alone, but through these small, repeated acts of instruction and inheritance. The skills, the stories, the way of life itself, are passed down hand to hand, voice to voice. As dusk begins to settle, the city glows. Small, saucer-like clay lamps are lit, their wicks floating in olive oil, casting a soft, flickering light. They appear in doorways and windows, their warm pools of light pushing back the gathering darkness. The sky above turns from orange and pink to a deep, velvety violet. The first stars begin to appear, impossibly bright in a world without electric haze. The conversations become softer, more intimate. Stories are told, tales of heroes, of gods, of the creation of the world, and perhaps stories that are closer to home, of a great storm many years ago, or of a legendary fisherman who caught a fish as big as a man. You find yourself walking away from the lights of the harbor, along the edge of the bay. The path here is less defined, more natural. You are walking on what will one day be the seabed. You look back at the city. It is a gentle constellation of lights, nestled between the dark land and the dark sea, under a vast canopy of stars. The murmur of the town is a soft hum behind you. Here, the only sound is the water. It laps at the shore with a steady, hypnotic rhythm. S-H-H-H-H, S-H-H-H-H, S-H-H-H-H. It is the sound of the world breathing. It is the sound of time itself passing. You look out across the dark water. The sea holds the last light of the sky on its surface. It seems immense, peaceful, eternal. It has given the city everything: food, a livelihood, a connection to the world. It is the city's cradle. There is no sense of foreboding, no hint of the slow, inevitable change that is already underway. The geological forces that will one day gently, inexorably, push this land down are working on a timescale too vast for human perception. The slow melting of distant ice sheets, raising the water level by a fraction of an inch each year, is a process as invisible as the turning of the earth. For now, in this moment, there is only peace. The relationship between the city and the sea is one of perfect, tranquil balance. You turn and walk back towards the warm, flickering lights. The smell of cooking fires is rich in the air now, mingling with the salt and the thyme. You return to your simple stone house. The loom is silent. The work of the day is done. You lie down again on your reed pallet, the sounds of the city now fading into a gentle quietude. The last thing you hear before you drift into sleep is that same, constant, reassuring sound that greeted you in the morning, the soft, rhythmic sigh of the waves. It is the lullaby of Pavlopetri, the sound of a city sleeping soundly beside the sea, unaware that one day it will be sleeping beneath it. And in that quiet, in that stillness, you too are invited to rest, to let go of the waking world, and to drift on the slow, gentle tide of sleep, knowing that this peaceful shore, this ancient memory will be here, waiting in the quiet depths. Let the stillness of Pavlopetri dissolve, its memory a soft, sun-baked stone resting in the quiet depths of your mind. We are drifting now, not on the clear, salty water of the Aegean, but on a current that is older, deeper, and alive in a different way. The air is heavier here, thick with the scent of damp earth, lotus flowers, and 1,000 years of civilization. You are floating on the Nile. The great river, the father of Egypt, is not just a body of water but a divinity, its pulse the rhythm of life itself. We have come to a city that was its greatest gateway, a place where the power of the pharaohs met the merchants of the known world. This is the city the Egyptians called Thonis, and the Greeks knew as Heracleion. For a time they were one and the same, a jewel of two cultures built upon the rich, unstable silt of the delta. Your journey begins on the water, for there is no other way to truly know this city. Heracleion is not built beside the water. It is woven through it. A vast network of canals, some wide and grand, others narrow and intimate, serve as its streets. You are in a small, simple skiff, pulled by a silent ferryman. The gentle rocking of the boat is a constant, soothing motion. The water here is not the brilliant blue of the open sea, but a murky, life-giving green-brown, opaque with the fertile mud that has nourished this land for eons. The sun is a different color too. It is a powerful, molten gold, and its light does not just illuminate the world, it seems to weigh upon it, casting everything in a haze of divine radiance. The city is a collection of islands, small and large, connected by high-arched wooden footbridges and the constant traffic of boats. Houses, built of mud brick and plastered white, rise directly from the water's edge, their foundations sinking into the soft earth. From open doorways, you catch glimpses of daily life. A woman grinding cosmetics on a stone pallet, a man weaving a fishing net, the sound of a harp being softly plucked. Life is lived in public, on the edge of the canals, in full view of the gods and one's neighbors. The ferryman pulls you into a wider channel, and the sounds of the city grow. This is the main artery, bustling with a quiet, efficient energy. Heavy barges, laden with grain from the fields of the interior, move slowly towards the main harbor, their crews chanting a low, rhythmic work song that keeps time with their long oars. Smaller, more nimble boats dart between them, carrying everything from bundles of papyrus reeds to cages of live fowl. You pass under bridge and for a moment, you are in shadow, the air cool and smelling of wet wood. When you emerge back into the golden light, you see them, the great ships of the Greeks. They are moored in a special basin, the Emporion, the great trading hub that makes this city so vital. Their design is different, their hulls built for the open sea, their masts taller. Sailors with pale skin and strange, clipped accents call out to each other, securing lines and unloading their cargo. Giant amphorae, filled with Greek wine and olive oil, are being carefully hoisted onto the quay. In return, the Egyptians load the ships with the treasures of their land, fine linen, granite, and the indispensable papyrus that is the paper of the ancient world. Near the customs house, you see a great stone slab, a stele, its surface covered in a trilingual inscription of dense hieroglyphs, Demotic script, and Greek letters. It is a decree from the pharaoh himself, laying out the taxes and tithes, the 10% levy on all trade that passes through this port, a portion of which goes directly to the great temple that is the city's heart. Everything here is ordered, catalogued, and blessed by the gods. Your small boat turns away from the commercial port and into a canal that feels different. It is wider, the water seems calmer, and the buildings along its banks are more grand. This is the sacred way. You are approaching the religious core of Heracleion, the great temple complex dedicated to Amun-Jereb, the supreme god, and his son Khonsu. The air itself seems to change. the smells of commerce replaced by the clean, heady scent of burning incense, frankincense and myrrh, drifting from bronze censers placed along the water's edge. Today is a festival day, one of the many that punctuate the Egyptian calendar. A great procession is underway, and you have joined its slow, majestic flow. Before you, a magnificent ceremonial barge, a naos, glides through the water. Its wooden hull is gilded, and it is adorned with garlands of blue lotus flowers. In its center, under canopy of fine linen, is a small, sealed shrine, within which travels the image of the god himself, hidden from profane eyes. Priests in spotless white linen robes stand on its deck, their heads shaved, their faces serene. One of them is gently shaking a sistrum, a sacred rattle, its high-pitched, metallic jangling cutting through the air, intended to soothe the gods and ward off evil spirits. The sound is hypnotic, rhythmic, drawing you deeper into the city's spiritual trance. Other boats follow in the barge's wake, filled with musicians playing harps and flutes, their melodies simple, winding, and repetitive. Worshippers line the banks of the canal, on the islands and bridges, their heads bowed in reverence as the shrine passes. They throw flowers onto the water, creating a floating carpet of blue and white petals that bobs in the wake of the procession. This is the city breathing as one, its collective soul focused on this single, sacred purpose. The Nile, the city's lifeblood, is today a vessel for prayer, the water itself consecrated by the passage of the divine. Every ripple, every current, seems to be carrying the hopes and fears of the people outwards, towards the great green, the vast expanse of the Mediterranean Sea. As you round a bend in the canal, the temple itself comes into view, and the sight makes you draw a slow, deep breath. It is immense. The entire complex is built on a huge, central island, dominating the city's skyline. The entrance is marked by two towering pylons, massive, sloping walls of stone that seem to hold up the sky itself. Their surfaces are covered in deeply carved hieroglyphs and images of the pharaoh making offerings to the gods, a testament to royal piety and power. And standing guard before these pylons are colossal figures carved from single blocks of red granite. You drift past one, craning your neck to see its face. It is the powerful, serene form of Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood, his body plump to signify fertility and abundance. Beside him is a statue of a Ptolemaic king, a pharaoh of Greek descent, depicted in the traditional Egyptian style, a symbol of how this city marries two worlds. These stone guardians have watched over this sacred space for centuries, their gaze fixed on the eternal horizon. They are so solid, so permanent, it seems impossible that they could ever fall. Your boat comes to rest at a landing stage, and you step ashore onto the sacred ground of the temple precinct. The ground itself feels different here, paved with massive flagstones, solid under your feet. But you can still feel the faint, almost imperceptible softness of the silt and clay deep beneath. The city rests on a bed of mud, a foundation that is both fertile and treacherous. But here, in the presence of the gods, such thoughts seem distant. The air is still and heavy with incense. The sounds of the city are gone, replaced by the whisper of the breeze and the low, melodic chanting of the priests. You are in the temple's vast outer courtyard, an open-air space designed to inspire awe. The sheer scale of it is meant to remind you of your smallness, of the immense gulf between the mortal and the divine. Priests move with a slow, deliberate grace, their white robes a stark contrast to the sun-baked stone. They are the functionaries of the sacred, the keepers of a knowledge that stretches back to the dawn of time. The procession comes to a halt before the main sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, a building of immense stone blocks whose doors are sealed. Only the highest-ranking priests may enter the presence of the god's true statue. The portable shrine from the barge is carried with great ceremony towards these doors. Offerings are laid out on stone altars. Loaves of bread, vessels of beer and wine, heaps of figs and dates, and bouquets of lotus. It is a feast for the gods, a replenishment of the divine energy that sustains the world. You watch as small, beautifully crafted lead models of boats are placed into a basin of holy water, symbolic offerings to ensure safe passage, both on the river and into the afterlife. Every action is steeped in meaning, a part of a ritual that has been performed, unchanged, for countless generations. There is a profound comfort in this repetition, in the belief that if the rituals are performed correctly, the sun will continue to rise, the Nile will continue to flood, and the city will continue to prosper. As the sun begins to dip lower, the golden light intensifies, bathing the temple in a final, fiery glow. The stone of the pylon seems to burn with an inner light. The ceremony concludes, the chanting subsides. A deep, resonant clang from a bronze gong echoes through the courtyard, signaling the end. The crowds of worshippers begin to disperse, their movements slow and peaceful, their faces filled with a quiet sense of fulfillment. They board the ferries and skiffs, melting back into the labyrinthine canals of the city as dusk descends. The musicians pack away their instruments. The priests retreat into the temple's mysterious inner chambers. Profound quiet settles over the sacred island. You find your way back to your small boat. The ferryman is waiting, his face as impassive as a stone carving. He pulls you away from the temple island, and as you look back, its massive form becomes a dark silhouette against the deepening twilight sky. The journey back is different. The canals are quieter now. The warm glow of oil lamps appears in windows and on porches, their light reflecting in long, wavering lines on the dark water. The smell of evening meals, roasting fish, baking bread, simmering lentils, replaces the scent of incense. The city is turning inward, preparing for the night. The rocking of the boat, the gentle dip and splash of the pole in the water, the soft darkness enveloping you, it all combines to create a deep sense of peace. You have witnessed the city's heart, its connection to the gods of water and sky. You have felt its ancient, powerful pulse. Heracleion lives in ceremony, in a grand and beautiful dance between the human and the divine, a dance performed on a stage of soft earth and flowing water. Tonight, the prayers of the festival, entrusted to the Nile, are making their slow journey out past the final marshes, out into the great sea, carrying the city's soul with them. And as you float through the tranquil, lamplit darkness, you feel yourself carried on that same gentle current, drifting slowly, peacefully, towards the boundless ocean of sleep. Let the memory of Egypt, with its golden sun and sacred river, recede into the quiet library of your mind. We travel eastward now, across vast lands and deep waters, to a different shore, a different light. The air here is warm and humid, thick with the perfume of jasmine flowers and the sharp, sweet scent of spices. The light is not the singular, dominating gold of a sun god, but the scattered, intimate glow of 1,000 tiny flames. We have arrived in Dwarka, the legendary city of Krishna, a kingdom of burnished gold and precious stones that rose from the sea itself. It is a city that lives and breathes devotion, its every stone saturated with prayer, its every alleyway echoing with the sound of bells. Our story begins at dusk, in that magical fleeting moment the poets call Gaudia Juli, the hour of cow dust, when the setting sun stains the sky orange and saffron, and the world pauses between the labor of the day and the rest of the night. You are a young scribe, and you are sitting in the cool, shaded veranda of your small home. Before you lies your work, a delicate palm leaf manuscript, its surface etched with the fine, curling lines of Sanskrit. With a stylus, you have been carefully copying a passage from the Bhagavata Purana, the story of the very God who founded this city. Your work is not a chore, but an act of meditation. Each character you form is a prayer, each verse a connection to the divine. As the last light fails, you cannot see your letters anymore. You lay down your tools, your fingers stained with ink. The day's work is done. It is time to join the life of the city. You rise and step out into the street. A gentle transformation is underway. In every doorway, in every window niche, small clay lamps, diyas, are being lit. A woman in a sapphire blue sari bends to place one on her threshold, her hands cupping the flame for a moment as she whispers a prayer. The small, flickering lights create pools of warm, trembling gold in the growing darkness. They are beacons of peace, each one a personal invitation to grace. The city is putting on its jewels for the night. You begin to walk, your path illuminated by this growing constellation of tiny flames. The air is alive with a symphony of gentle sounds. The distant, melodic ringing of a temple bell, the soft murmur of families gathering for their evening meal, the laughter of children playing a final game in a hidden courtyard. Your path takes you through a market street. The vendors are not shouting their wares, but sitting peacefully beside their goods, their faces lit by the warm glow of their own lanterns. The smells here are intoxicating, a rich tapestry woven from 100 different threads. You pass a spice merchant, and the air is heavy with the earthy scent of turmeric, the sweet perfume of cardamom, the sharp tang of cloves, and the woody aroma of cinnamon bark. The spices are piled high in woven baskets, their colors a vibrant palette of ochre, red, and brown. Next is a flower cellar, surrounded by fragrant mountains of marigold garlands, their brilliant orange a shock of joy in the twilight. Ropes of white jasmine add their heady perfume to the air, a scent that speaks of offerings and devotion. You pass a weaver's shop, where bolts of silk are stacked like jewels, shimmering in the lamplight in shades of emerald, ruby, and peacock blue. This is not the chaos of commerce. It is a display of life's abundance, a quiet celebration of the beauty that fills the world. You continue your walk, turning down a wide street that slopes gently towards the water. The sound of the sea, which has been a distant whisper until now, grows into a steady, rhythmic wash. You are approaching the Ghats, the broad stone steps that lead down into the holy waters, where the Gomti River meets the Arabian Sea. This is the liminal space of Dwarka, the threshold between the sacred city and the eternal ocean. The steps are teeming with life. Pilgrims who have traveled for weeks, sometimes months, to be here, are performing their evening ablutions. They wade into the water, their hands cupped, chanting soft mantras as they pour libations to their ancestors and their gods. The water laps gently around them, accepting their prayers. You watch as a family releases a small offering, a boat made from a single large leaf, carrying a marigold flower and a tiny, flickering deer. It bobs on the water, a fragile prayer of light, joining a dozen others as they are carried by the tide out into the darkness of the sea. It is a gesture of immense faith, a letting go, an entrustment of one's hopes to the divine. Lifting your gaze from the water, you look back at the city. From here on the Ghats, you can see its magnificent structure. Dwarka is a fortress of faith, protected by great sea walls of massive, expertly fitted stone blocks. You can see them descending deep into the water, foundations that, according to legend, were laid on land granted by the ocean god himself. The city rises from these ramparts, a series of squares and courtyards, palaces and halls, all meticulously planned. The scriptures say the original city was built by the celestial architect, Vishwakarma, and that its gates were studded with emeralds and its buildings made of gold. While this city is made of humble stone, it still carries the echo of that divine blueprint in its perfect proportions and its palpable sense of sacred geometry. Everything is aligned, everything has its place, all oriented towards the city's spiritual heart. And it is towards that heart you now turn. You climb the steps from the Ghats and join a stream of people moving with a quiet purpose through the streets. The sounds of worship grow louder, more immersive. The ringing of bells is no longer distant, but a constant, resonant chiming that seems to vibrate in your very bones. The air thrums with the sound of chanting, hundreds of voices joined in a single, powerful wave of devotion. You are approaching the Jagat Mandir, the temple of the world, the main sanctuary of Dwarkadhish, the king of Dwarka, Krishna himself. Its main tower, the Shikara, soars into the night sky, a magnificent, ornate spire of carved stone, its pinnacle adorned with a fluttering saffron flag that catches the light from below. The entire temple complex glows, lit by thousands of lamps, making it appear as if it is on fire with a holy, harmless flame. You remove your sandals at the entrance, the cool stone a comfort to your feet, and step into the temple courtyard. The atmosphere inside is electric, yet peaceful. The air is thick with the sweet, sacred smoke of camphor and sandalwood incense. The carved pillars of the main hall are alive with stories, depicting scenes from Krishna's life. As a mischievous child, as a divine lover, as a wise king and philosopher. Devotees crowd the hall, their faces upturned, their eyes filled with love and longing. They are here for darshan, the act of seeing and being seen by the deity, a moment of profound, personal connection. There is no solemn silence here, but a joyous communal celebration. Suddenly, the great bells begin to ring with a driving, insistent rhythm. The priests, dressed in brilliant silks, emerge before the central shrine. The moment for the evening aarti, the ceremony of light, has arrived. A priest lifts a large, multi-tiered lamp, its many wicks burning brightly with ghee. He begins to wave it in slow, deliberate circles before the veiled inner sanctum, where the image of the god resides. As he circles the light, the collective voice of the crowd swells into a hymn, a bhajan, its melody ancient and deeply moving. The sound fills the hall, bouncing off the stone walls, a powerful current of pure devotion. Cymbals clash, a conch shell is blown, its deep resonant note cutting through the air. The energy is overwhelming, a tidal wave of sound, light and faith that washes over you, cleansing you, lifting you up. It is a moment of total sensory immersion, a dissolution of the self into a greater, collective consciousness. When the final note of the hymn fades and the last peal of the bell dies away, a deep, resonant silence falls upon the hall. The ceremony is over. The crowd begins to slowly disperse, their faces serene, their spiritual thirst quenched for another day. You find a quiet corner of the courtyard to sit, your heart still beating in time with the rhythm of the aarti. You look at the people around you, the pilgrims and the residents, and you understand that Dwarka is more than a city of stone and light. It is a living entity, an idea, a promise. It is the belief that the divine can walk among mortals, that a kingdom of perfect justice and beauty can exist on this earth. Krishna's presence is not just in the sanctum. It is in the sweet smell of the flower garlands, in the taste of the blessed food, in the shared smiles of the devotees. You rise and make your way back towards the sea gate. The moon is higher now, a silver sickle in the dark sky. You stand once more at the top of the Ghats, looking out at the vast, black expanse of the Arabian Sea. The tide is high, and the waves break with a soft roar on the lower steps. Out on the dark water, the last of the pilgrims' lamp offerings still flicker, a scattered, fading constellation of mortal prayers on an immortal ocean. The sea, you think, is part of the divine. It was the sea that gave way for Dwarka to be born. It is the sea that guards its western flank. And it is the sea, according to the same scriptures you copy each day, that will one day embrace the city again when its purpose is fulfilled. The legend says that after Krishna departed this world, the ocean rose and gently, peacefully, swallowed his beloved golden city, taking it back into its mysterious depths, preserving it from the decay of a lesser age. There is no fear in this thought, only a sense of a perfect divine cycle. The sea does not destroy, it receives, it remembers. And as you stand there, breathing in the cool, salty air, listening to the eternal rhythm of the waves, you feel the vibrant energy of the city slowly settle into a deep, abiding peace, a tranquility that invites you to rest, knowing you are safe in a kingdom held in the loving, patient embrace of the sea. Let the sacred smoke of Dwarka's temples drift away, and let the ringing of its bells fade into a gentle echo. We are crossing the world's oceans once more, leaving the ancient East for the new, rapacious world of the West. The air we breathe is no longer perfumed with sandalwood and jasmine, but with the sharp, sweet tang of molasses and rum, and the ever-present brine of the Caribbean Sea. The light is not the soft glow of 1,000 prayer lamps, but the harsh, brilliant glare of a tropical sun. We have come to a city that has no time for gods, for its only true faith is in gold. This is Port Royal, Jamaica. The richest and wickedest city in the world, a place of sin and salt, built on a foundation of sand and avarice. And the day is June 7th, in the year 1692. The sun is climbing, the clock is ticking. You awaken not to a gentle sea breeze, but to the clamour of a city already in full throat. You are in a small, stuffy room on the second floor of a brick building on Queen Street. The air is thick and humid, and the wooden shutters do little to keep out the noise. Below, the street is a river of sound. The iron-rimmed wheels of a dray cart loaded with barrels of sugar groan and clatter over the uneven cobblestones. The sharp cries of vendors selling mangoes and plantains cut through the low hubbub of 100 conversations in English, Spanish, French, and the various tongues of Africa. From a nearby house, you hear the angry squawk of a parrot, and from further away, the rhythmic, metallic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. This city does not wake slowly, it explodes into life. It is a place of relentless, driving energy, a frantic dance of commerce and survival. You rise and dress, the clothes already feeling damp against your skin in the morning heat. Looking out your window, you see the peculiar architecture of the city. These are not the low, earth-hugging stone homes of Pavlopetri or the mud-brick dwellings of Egypt. These are English houses, built by settlers who brought their memories of London with them. They are 2, 3, even 4 stories tall, made of heavy red brick, with steeply pitched roofs. They stand shoulder to shoulder, crammed onto the narrow spit of land, their foundations resting on nothing more than loose sand and gravel. They seem precarious, top-heavy, as if a strong wind could send them toppling. The city feels temporary, a hastily built stage for a drama of immense wealth. You make your way down the narrow staircase and out into the street. The sun is already fierce, and you seek the thin strip of shade offered by the overhanging upper stories of the buildings. The city is a crush of humanity. Wealthy merchants in sweat-stained linen suits and wide-brimmed hats stride with purpose, their minds on ledgers and profits. Rough-looking sailors, their faces weathered from the sea, swagger in loose trousers, some with pistols tucked into their belts, their eyes scanning the crowd. Enslaved men and women, their bodies gleaming with sweat, move through the throng carrying immense loads, bales of cotton, crates of goods, heavy timbers for the shipyards. Their faces are grim, their movements weary but strong. The city's great wealth is built upon their backs. Everyone here is part of the machine, a cog in the great engine of the sugar trade. Your path takes you towards the docks, the city's chaotic heart. The smell changes here. The scent of unwashed bodies and cooking fires gives way to the sharp, clean smell of salt, the acrid smell of tar being used to caulk the hull of a ship, and the damp, earthy smell of wet hemp rope. The harbour is a forest of masts. Great merchantmen, fresh from Bristol in London, are moored beside smaller, faster sloops and privateering vessels, their paint scarred and their sails patched. These are the ships that make the city rich. Some carry legitimate cargo, bringing manufactured goods from Europe and taking back the island's incredible bounty of sugar. Others have a darker purpose. They are the vessels of the buccaneers, the privateers who have made Port Royal their base for raiding the Spanish Main. For decades, this city has been a thorn in the side of the Spanish Empire, a safe haven where pirates could bring their plundered treasure, silver bars, pieces of 8, gold doubloons, and spend it with abandon. The city's authorities, even the famous Captain Henry Morgan, who once served as its lieutenant governor, have long turned a blind eye, for that stolen wealth floods the city's economy. Every tavern, every merchant, every craftsman profits from the spoils of piracy. You walk along the wharf, past mountains of goods waiting to be loaded. Hogsheads of raw, brown sugar leak a sticky residue onto the stones, attracting swarms of flies. Piles of deep blue indigo dye, pungent and earthy, sit next to sacks of coffee and cocoa beans. This is the wealth of the New World, concentrated in one tiny, teeming place. You watch as a Spanish prize ship, captured only weeks ago, is being unloaded. Its cargo is not sugar, but silver. Rough, heavy bars of it are being carried under armed guard to the merchants' counting houses. The sailors who seized it are already celebrating, their pockets heavy with coin, ready to pour it into the city's 300 taverns and brothels. In Port Royal, a fortune can be made in a single voyage and lost in a single night. Life is lived at a fever pitch, for no one knows if they will see another sunrise. You turn away from the docks and head into the city's commercial center. You pass a tavern, its doors wide open to the street. Though it is not yet noon, the place is already loud with rough laughter and the off-key singing of a sea shanty. The sour smell of stale rum and beer spills out into the street. There is one such establishment for every 10 men in the city. They are the places where deals are struck, where mutinies are planned, where men drink away the horrors they have seen and committed on the high seas. This is the source of the city's infamous reputation, the reason preachers in Boston and London call it the Sodom of the New World. But to the people here, it is simply life. It is a city of raw, untamed appetites, a place stripped of pretense. You walk down a street known as the Chocolate Walk, where the wealthiest merchants and plantation owners have their offices. Here, the noise is slightly more subdued. Inside the cool, dark interiors of their counting houses, you can glimpse these men of means, sitting at heavy wooden desks, sipping the fashionable new drink, hot chocolate, thick and unsweetened, as they examine their ledgers. They are the masters of this universe, the men who pull the strings, financing the slave voyages and the privateering expeditions, growing ever richer from the relentless trade in human bodies and human greed. The city is a pyramid of ambition, and these men sit at its very peak. Your walk takes you to the edge of the city, near the fortifications. You see the imposing walls of Fort Charles, its cannons pointing out to sea, their black mouths ready to defend the harbor from any naval attack. The city is perpetually on a war footing, always prepared for the Spanish to seek revenge, or for a rival European power to try and seize this jewel of the Caribbean. The soldiers on the ramparts look bored in the growing heat, their red coats already dark with sweat. They scan the horizon for enemy sails, for the only threat they have ever been taught to expect is the one that comes from over the water. No one ever looks down. No one considers the ground beneath their feet, this loose, unstable sand that the sea deposited here over millennia. The city has built its defenses against its enemies, but it has no defense against itself, against the very land upon which it is built. The sun continues its climb, now almost directly overhead. The heat is becoming oppressive. The shadows are shrinking. There is a brief lull in the city's activity as people begin to think of their midday meal, of seeking shelter from the worst of the heat. A church bell begins to toll from St. Paul's, the city's main Anglican church. It rings slowly, steadily, marking the hour. You pass a woman sitting in a doorway, fanning herself, her eyes half closed. You see a ship's captain signing a contract with a merchant, the final scratch of the quill pen sealing the deal. In a tavern, a barman pours a final tankard of ale, its foam spilling over the rim. The entire city, for one brief shimmering moment, seems to be holding its breath. The air is still, the sea is calm. The sky is a brilliant, cloudless blue. All the noise, all the frantic energy, all the greed and ambition and desperation of Port Royal seems to pause, suspended in the hot, heavy air of a Caribbean morning that feels just like any other. It is 11:43 in the morning. The city is poised on the brink of a moment it will never see coming, a moment that will swallow it whole. And in this final, deceptive second of peace, the ground beneath you gives a slight, almost imperceptible shudder. Let the memory of cities fade. Let the clamour of Port Royal, the bells of Dwarka, the chants of Heracleion, and the quiet hum of Pavlopetri dissolve into the silence from which they came. We are journeying deeper now, past the invention of the wheel, past the birth of agriculture, past the first fired pot. We are returning to a time before cities, before walls, before kings. A time when the only structure that mattered was the hearth, the circle of stones around a living fire. We are coming to rest in a land that no longer exists, a vast, green country that now lies sleeping beneath the cold, grey waters of the North Sea. This was Doggerland, the lost heart of ancient Europe, and we are here to walk its misty paths, to feel its soft earth, and to listen to its profound silence. There is no single day here, for time is measured differently. It is measured in the turning of seasons, in the migration of birds, in the slow, patient growth of a tree. You are part of a small family, a wandering band of perhaps 20 souls. Your world is a vast, green expanse of gentle, rolling hills, dense woodlands and wide, slow-moving rivers. This is not a savage wilderness. It is a garden. You know every inch of it. Your mind holds a map not of roads and borders, but of animal tracks, of berry patches, of fishing spots, of the places where the best flint can be found. Your connection to this land is as deep and instinctual as the roots of the ancient oaks. Our journey begins beside the fire. It is the heart of your small, temporary camp, a circle of warmth and light in the vast quiet of the pre-dawn world. The fire crackles and spits, its smoke rising straight into the still, cold air. Around it, your family sleeps, wrapped in the thick hides of deer and aurochs. The smell of wood smoke and sleeping bodies is a familiar, comforting perfume. You are the one who watches. You feed the fire with dry branches, your movements slow and practiced. Beyond the circle of light, the world is a tapestry of shadows and soft, grey mist. The mist clings to the landscape here. It rises from the marshlands and settles in the hollows, muffling all sound, making the world feel dreamlike and insubstantial. It is the breath of the land. As the first hint of dawn touches the eastern sky, turning the mist from grey to a pale, luminous silver, the camp begins to stir. There is no sudden flurry of activity, just a slow, organic waking. People rise, stretch, and come to the fire, their faces soft with sleep. A child laughs. A mother nurses her infant. Two men discuss the day's hunt in low, guttural tones, their language a thing of rhythm and nuance, perfectly suited to this world. One of them is knapping flint. He holds a core of dark grey stone in one hand and a hammerstone in the other. With sharp, precise taps, he strikes flakes from the core. Tea-chack, tea-chack, tea-chack. The sound is one of the few sharp noises in this soft world. It is the sound of creation. Each flake is a potential tool. A scraper to clean a hide, a blade to butcher meat, or a tiny, razor-sharp microlith that will become the barb on a bone-tipped arrow. This is your technology, born of patience and an intimate understanding of stone. Today you are moving on. The herds of red deer have shifted their grazing grounds, and you will follow. The camp is dismantled with an easy, practiced efficiency. The hide shelters are taken down and rolled up. Tools are gathered. Everything you own can be carried on your backs. You are not tied to a place, only to the rhythms of the land itself. You set off, walking in single file, a silent procession through the misty morning. Your feet, wrapped in soft hide, make almost no sound on the damp, mossy earth. You move through a forest of birch and hazel, their slender, pale trunks like ghosts in the fog. The air is cool and smells of decaying leaves and wet soil. Dappled light filters through the canopy, illuminating patches of ferns and moss on the forest floor. You are not intruders here. You are part of the forest, as much as the deer and the boar. Your journey takes you down from the wooded hills into the wide, flat basin of a river valley. The river is immense, slow and meandering, its banks lined with dense reed beds. This is the great river that archaeologists of the future will call the Schotten, a lost waterway that once drained a huge part of northern Europe. To you, it is simply the river. It is a source of food and a pathway through the landscape. You pause at its edge. The mud is soft and cool between your toes. You see the tracks of an aurochs, the great wild cattle, that passed this way only hours ago. You see the delicate prints of a crane at the water's edge. The land is a storybook, and you know how to read its every page. Your family has a dugout canoe hidden in the reeds, a heavy, solid boat carved from a single tree trunk with fire and flint adzes. Some of you board it, paddling out into the slow-moving current. The world looks different from the water. The reeds tower over you, and the sky seems vast and open. You glide past small, wooded islands and wide, shallow lagoons where waterfowl gather in their thousands. You fish as you travel, using harpoons with barbed points carved from deer antler. With a flick of the wrist, a man spears a large pike, its silver scales flashing in the sun as he lifts it from the water. This land is generous. It provides everything you need. It is here, near the great river and the vast estuary it flows into, that you feel the subtlest of changes. The old ones in your group, their faces a map of wrinkles, they speak of it sometimes around the campfire. They say the tides seem a little higher each year. They point to a stand of salt-bleached trees, once inland, now on the edge of a tidal salt marsh. They remember time when you could walk to a certain island at low tide to gather birds' eggs. Now that path is always underwater. These are not frightening portents, they are just observations, changes in the world to be noted and adapted to. The land breathes, it shifts, you simply move with it. You make your camp on slightly higher ground this season than you did the last. You do not know, you cannot possibly comprehend, that a world away, a continent of ice is slowly melting, releasing trillions of gallons of water into the oceans, and that the floor of this vast land is slowly, imperceptibly sinking under its own weight. You only know that the water is coming slowly, gently, like a rising tide that never fully recedes. You establish a new camp on a sandy ridge overlooking the estuary. From here, you can see for miles. You can see the great herds of deer grazing on the open plains, and watch for the telltale sign of smoke from another family's fire. You are not alone in this world, but the land is vast enough for everyone. The days are spent hunting, fishing, and gathering. The women and children search the woodlands for hazelnuts and roots, their woven baskets slowly filling. The men stalk a wild boar, their movements silent and coordinated, a dance of deadly intent that ends with a well-aimed spear. The nights are spent around the fire. This is the time for stories, for myths of creation, for tales of hero ancestors and trickster spirits. It is the time for community, for reinforcing the bonds that allow you to survive. The firelight flickers on the faces of your family, and in their eyes you see the reflection of a world that is ancient, peaceful, and whole. As autumn deepens, the air grows colder. The leaves of the birch trees turn a brilliant yellow and fall like golden rain. The migratory birds begin to leave, their calls echoing across the marshes as they head for warmer lands. You feel the change in your bones. It is time to prepare for the winter, to move back to the more sheltered hunting grounds in the deep woods. But one evening, a great storm rolls in from the sea. The wind howls through the trees, and the rain comes down in blinding sheets. The estuary, normally so calm, is churned into a grey, angry froth. The waves are bigger than you have ever seen them, and they crash far up the shore, swallowing the beach and licking at the edge of the woods. When morning comes, the storm has passed, but the world has changed. The water has not fully retreated. A large swath of the low-lying plain is now a shimmering sheet of salt water. The land is smaller than it was yesterday. You look at it not with fear, but with a quiet acceptance. It is time to move. Your family journeys away from the coast, back to the heart of the land. And as you walk, the narrative lens pulls back. We see your small group, a tiny flicker of human warmth and consciousness, moving through a vast, green world. And then we pull back further, watching not just a single journey, but the slow, inevitable rhythm of generations. We see your children, and their children, and their children's children. Each generation makes their camp on slightly higher ground. Each generation's map is a little smaller than the last. The great river becomes a wide bay. The bay becomes an open sea. The hill you once stood on becomes a lonely island, and then a submerged shoal where fish now swim. The process is so slow, so gentle, it is never a catastrophe. It is simply a long, slow farewell. The land of Doggerland does not die in a cataclysm. It sinks into a deep, watery slumber, taking with it the memories of the forests, the rivers, and the last campfires of its people. And in this immense, quiet, and timeless process, there is a profound peace, an invitation to let go, to surrender to the deep, slow-breathing rhythms of the world, and to drift into a sleep as deep and as ancient as the land beneath the waves. The fire at the heart of Doggerland has dwindled to embers, its warmth a fading memory in a land that has surrendered to the sea. The stories told around that hearth have fallen silent, their language scattered and lost, absorbed into the great, quiet memory of the earth. We leave now the specific lives, the individual heartbeats, and begin to drift into a wider perspective. We are pulling back, rising high above the lost shores and sunken harbours, to see the world not on a human scale, but on a planetary one. We are here to ask a gentle question. How does a city vanish? How does a world of stone and story, of laughter and trade, slip beneath the waves? The answer is not one of violence or anger. It is a story of time, of water, and of the slow, deep, patient breathing of the planet itself. The sea has always been the great constant of our world, but its edges have never been fixed. The coastlines we trace on maps are merely a snapshot, a single frame in a film that has been running for billions of years. For the ocean, like a living thing, breathes. Over eons, it inhales and exhales. During the Great Ice Ages, when vast continents of ice locked up the world's water, the ocean drew a great breath in, and the sea levels fell dramatically. The shorelines expanded, and lands like Doggerland were born from the exposed continental shelf. It was in this world of a shallow, withdrawn sea, that our ancestors walked from what would become Germany to what would become England, their feet on dry ground. But every inhalation is followed by an exhalation. As the planet warmed at the end of the last glacial period, the great ice sheets began to melt. This was not a sudden flood, but a slow, inexorable thaw that lasted for millennia. The planet was letting out its long-held breath, and the water returned to the sea. This is the gentlest way a world vanishes. For the people of Doggerland, it was not a single event. It was a change so slow it could barely be perceived in a single lifetime. It was a familiar marsh that became a permanent inlet. It was a low-lying hunting ground that became a tidal flat. It was the sea's quiet, persistent, and final reclamation of its ancient territory. The rising water was like a slow-motion watercolor painting, the blues of the sea gradually bleeding into the greens and browns of the land, redrawing the map of the world with an unhurried, masterful hand. Doggerland did not sink in terror. It dissolved in mist and memory, a process as natural and as peaceful as the morning fog burning off in the sun. This global rise in the sea, this great exhalation of the Ice Age, set the stage for all the stories of our sunken worlds. It brought the water to the very doorsteps of the cities we have visited, raising the stakes and narrowing the margins between the land and the deep. But the level of the sea is only half of the story. For the land, too, is not as solid and dependable as it seems. It rises, it falls, it tilts, and it shifts in a slow, geological ballet. Imagine the city of Heracleion, a jewel of trade and faith built on the Nile Delta. It was a city built not on rock, but on the gifts of the river. Thousands of feet of soft, waterlogged silt and clay, deposited layer by layer over countless millennia. This soft ground was the source of the delta's fertility, but it was also the source of its fragility. The immense weight of the city, with its colossal granite statues and its towering temple pylons, was a heavy burden for the soft earth to bear. Year after year, century after century, the ground beneath Heracleion was slowly compacting under this immense pressure, a process called subsidence. The city was sinking, but so slowly, so gradually, that the change was likely accommodated with rebuilt foundations and raised floors. The end for Heracleion, when it came, was likely not a great, violent shaking, but a quiet, catastrophic failure of the ground itself. Geologists speak of a phenomenon called liquefaction, and it is as strange as it sounds. When water-saturated soil, like the mud of the Nile Delta, is subjected to a shock, perhaps a major river flood, or the distant tremors of an earthquake in the Mediterranean, it can momentarily lose all its strength. The bonds between the soil particles are broken, and for a few terrifying moments, the solid earth behaves like a thick liquid. For Heracleion, this was the final act. The ground that had supported it for centuries simply let go. The great temple of Amun-Jareb, with all its treasures, did not topple over. It likely slid, gracefully and inexorably, into the liquefied mud, settling into the soft earth that could no longer hold it. The canals that were its streets would have widened, the islands would have slumped and submerged, the entire city surrendering to the soft, watery grave that had been waiting beneath it all along. It was not destroyed, it was enveloped. A similar fate, driven by different forces, befell the gentle city of Pavlopetri. It too was a victim of rising sea levels, but its final disappearance was written in the deep grammar of the Earth's crust. The Mediterranean is a geologically dynamic place, the meeting point of the great African and Eurasian tectonic plates. These colossal plates are in constant, slow-motion collision, a process that crumples the Earth's crust, creating mountains and deep basins. The coastline of southern Greece, where Pavlopetri stood, is riddled with fault lines, cracks in the bedrock, where the land can suddenly shift. The sinking of Pavlopetri was likely not one single event, but a series of small downward steps. A local earthquake, perhaps too small to cause major destruction on its own, would have caused the section of coastline on which the city was built to drop by a few feet. Then another, a generation later, would have lowered it further. Combined with the slow, steady rise of the sea, each small seismic step brought the city closer to the waves, until its streets became channels, its courtyards became tidal pools, and its homes became reefs for fish. The city descended into the sea not in a fall, but on a slow, stuttering escalator, a journey downwards that may have taken centuries to complete. And what of the cities where the end was not so gentle? What of the places where the earth did not sag or settle, but violently shrugged? we return to the final, sun-drenched morning of Port Royal. The city was a paradox of immense wealth built on the most precarious of foundations. A long, narrow spit of loose sand and gravel. It was, in geological terms, an accident waiting to happen. Jamaica lies on the boundary of the Caribbean and North American plates, and the Heracleion Garden Fault System, a major crack in the Earth's crust, runs just south of the island. On that June morning in 1692, the strain that had been building along that fault for over a century was suddenly released. The result was a massive earthquake, its shock waves racing through the bedrock towards the unsuspecting city. When those waves hit the loose, water-saturated sand of the Port Royal Spit, the same phenomenon that claimed Heracleion, liquefaction, was triggered, but on a scale of terrifying speed and violence. The solid ground ceased to be solid. Eyewitness accounts describe the earth opening and closing, of the ground rising and falling in waves like the sea itself. The heavy, four-story brick buildings, so ill-suited to this land, lost their foundations in an instant. They did not just collapse, they slid, tilted, and sank directly into the churning, liquefied sand. Entire streets with their buildings and their inhabitants disappeared in moments, swallowed by the earth. When the shaking stopped, mere minutes later, the sand resolidified, trapping everything it had consumed. 2/3 of the city was gone, slipped directly beneath the waters of the harbour. Port Royal's great sin was not its piracy or its debauchery, but a sin of geological ignorance, building a city of brick upon a foundation of sand, in a place where the earth itself was restless. And finally, we drift back to the shores of Dwarka, the holy city of Krishna, where myth and geology tell the same story in different languages. The legend tells us that after Krishna's departure from the earthly realm, the sea rose up and reclaimed his golden city. The geological story points to the same conclusion. The coast of Gujarat, where Dwarka lies, is a seismically active region. History records numerous devastating earthquakes and tsunamis in this area. It is entirely possible that a great earthquake caused the land upon which the ancient city was built to suddenly drop, a process called tectonic subsidence. In the moments following such an event, a tsunami, a great wave generated by the seismic shift, could have washed over the newly lowered coastline, scouring the city from the face of the earth. The legend says the sea god, Varuna, took back the land he had loaned to Krishna. A geologist might say that a submarine landslide triggered by an earthquake generated a displaced wave. Both stories describe the same outcome. The sea in a single, powerful act, embracing the city and pulling it beneath the waves. The miracle is not that the stories are different, but that after thousands of years, they point to the same fundamental truth. So you see, there is no single way that a city vanishes. Some are nibbled away by the slow, patient rise of the tide over 1,000 years. Some are surrendered to the soft, sinking earth beneath them. Some are shaken into the sea in a matter of minutes. Each city's disappearance is a unique story, a conversation between human ambition and the immense, inexorable forces of the planet. These cities are not monuments to failure, but quiet testaments to a profound truth, that we are guests here, building our ephemeral homes on a world that is constantly, quietly, and beautifully remaking itself. And in that inevitable, powerful, and ceaseless transformation, there is a deep and abiding peace, a comfort in knowing that all things return to the elements from which they came. We return to the heat and the noise. We return to the final moment of the world that was Port Royal. The sun is at its highest point in the sky, a merciless, white-hot disk in a sapphire-blue heaven. It is just before noon on the 7th of June, 1692. The city is a symphony of frantic life, its every corner humming with commerce and conversation. On the wharves, the air is thick with the smell of tar and molasses, and the rhythmic chant of sailors hoisting cargo fills the air. In the taverns, the first tankards of the midday meal are being drawn, the cool ale foaming over the pewter rims. In a counting house, a merchant dips his quill into a pot of ink, the scratch of the nib on the paper a small, dry sound in the humid air. A woman fanning herself in a doorway, a child chasing a stray dog, a blacksmith's hammer falling on a glowing piece of iron. All the infinite, ordinary moments of a living city are proceeding as they always have. The world is solid. The ground is firm. The future is a thing that is expected to arrive. And then it begins. Not with a bang, but with a low, deep thrum, a vibration that seems to come not through the ears, but up through the soles of the feet. It is a sound felt more than heard, a profound groan from the very bedrock of the island. Heads lift, conversations falter. A sailor on the wharf pauses, his hand on a rope, and looks towards Fort Charles, thinking perhaps a powder magazine has exploded. The merchant's hand freezes over his ledger. For a second, a deep and unfamiliar quiet falls over the city, a collective moment of questioning suspense. The thrumming deepens, graduating to a shudder, and the ground beneath the city gives a violent, sickening lurch, as if the whole world has been struck by a giant's hammer. This is no cannonade, this is the earth itself, waking from a long and troubled sleep. What happens next is not a collapse, it is a transformation. It is a strange and terrible ballet, a soft motion dissolving of a world that thought it was real. The city of Port Royal is built on a long spit of sand, a temporary gift from the sea, and in this moment, the ground remembers its true nature. The first to go are the great brick houses, the proud, top-heavy English buildings so unsuited for this land. A 4-story tavern on Queen Street, its rooms filled with the sounds of morning drinkers, does not explode into rubble. It gives a graceful, shuddering curtsy. Its foundations, their grip on the sand lost, simply give way. The entire building, in a slow, almost gentle motion, sinks downwards into the earth as if it were a feather bed. There is a deep, grinding sigh of brick and mortar, a chorus of groaning timbers, and then it is gone, its roofline sliding beneath the churning ground until nothing is left but a bubbling morass of sand and water. The very streets begin to move. The solid, dependable cobblestones ripple, as if a great beast is moving beneath them. The ground becomes a liquid, a thick, flowing river of stone and earth. Fissures, great cracks in the land, open and close like mouths, swallowing people, horses and carts, then sealing themselves again with a wet hydraulic hiss. The city is coming apart not in pieces, but as a whole, its very fabric dissolving. A marketplace, moments before vibrant with the colors of tropical fruit, becomes a churning, chaotic sea of sand. The great stone walls of the fort, built to withstand cannonballs, slump and slide towards the harbor, their cannons tumbling silently into the deep. It is the physics of a nightmare. It is liquefaction. The solid land has forgotten how to be solid, and everything built upon it is now adrift on a temporary, earthbound sea. The harbor itself joins the dance. The water is drawn back for a moment, exposing the muddy sea floor, revealing the anchors and keels of the great ships. Then it returns, not as a crashing wave, but as a great, silent, rising wall of green water. It does not look like a force of destruction, but one of majestic, implacable will. It rises above the sinking wharves, pauses for a heartbeat, and then washes over the dissolving edge of the city. It is not a wave that breaks. It is a tide that arrives all at once. It sweeps inwards, a great cleansing, scouring motion. It lifts the ships from their moorings and carries them inland, their hulls scraping over the roofs of submerged buildings. It picks up the debris of the ruined city, splintered wood, broken crates, the contents of 1,000 lives, and pulls it all back out into the bay in a great, swirling vortex. The boundary between the land and the sea, so clearly defined just minutes before, is now gone. There is only the water, churning with the ghost of the city it has just consumed. And then, as suddenly as it began, the most violent shaking stops. The ground, its brief moment of liquidity over, begins to resolidify. The churning sand settles, the fissures cease their motion, and a new sound, or rather the lack of it, descends upon the scene. It is a profound and unearthly silence. The symphony of the city, the voices, the carts, the hammers, the laughter, has been utterly extinguished. All that remains is the gentle lapping of water against the wreckage, the soft sigh of the sea breeze, and the distant, mournful cries of the gulls, circling over a world they no longer recognize. Your perspective shifts. You are no longer on the land, for there is very little land left. You are floating now, adrift in the warm, debris-strewn water of the harbor. The world is calm, surreal, and silent. You are a ghost, a disembodied witness to the aftermath. You drift slowly through the wreckage, a silent observer in this new, aquatic world. The sun, indifferent, still shines with the same brilliant intensity, its light glinting on the surface of the water, illuminating a scene of impossible ruin. Where the bustling waterfront once stood, there is now only open water. The tops of the tallest buildings jut from the sea like strange, rectangular islands, the steeple of St. Paul's Church rises from the waves, its bell, which had been tolling the hour, now forever silenced within its submerged belfry. The masts of sunken ships are tangled with the branches of what were once shade trees in a wealthy merchant's garden. You float past a piece of a tavern wall, its painted sign, the Grapes, still visible, rocking gently in the swell. A ship's ledger drifts by, its neat columns of figures bleeding into blurry, abstract patterns as the ink dissolves in the salt water. You see a pirate's treasure chest, its heavy locks broken, lying on the new seabed just a few feet below the surface. A river of silver coins, pieces of 8, spills from its side, glinting in the refracted sunlight, a fortune no one will ever spend. The raw, desperate ambition of the city has been reduced to these mute, floating fragments. Its immense wealth, its noise, its pride, all of it has been washed away, leaving only these quiet, poignant ghosts. The very geography has been remade. The long, narrow sandspit has been fractured and submerged. What was once a thriving metropolis is now a scattering of ruined islands and a treacherous, shallow bay. The survivors, clinging to driftwood and the roofs of broken buildings, stare in stunned silence at the empty space where their world used to be. There are no screams, no cries for help, just a profound, collective shock. The event was too vast, too sudden, too absolute for immediate comprehension. It was as if a god had simply wiped the city from the map with a sweep of his hand. You drift on, carried by the gentle tide. The silence deepens. The water is beginning to clear, and you can see the ghostly outlines of the sunken city below you. An entire street, its buildings leaning against each other as if for comfort, lies perfectly preserved in the shallow deep. A doorway stands open, leading from one watery room to another. It is a modern Pompeii, created not by ash, but by sand and water. In 3 minutes, a city has become an archaeological site. Its raucous, violent, vibrant life has been instantly replaced by the slow, silent, patient life of the sea. And as you float there, under the brilliant, silent sun, you feel the profound, humbling peace of utter annihilation. The struggles of humanity, its sins and its glories, are so loud, yet so fragile. And the earth and the sea, in their own time and in their own way, will always have the final, silent word. Let the violent, final shudder of Port Royal recede. Let the churning water grow still, and let the silence that followed its fall deepen into a profound and lasting peace. We leave the raw, recent wound of the New World and return to the ancient waters of the Mediterranean, to the coast of Egypt. We are returning to a place we have visited before, the sacred city of Heracleion, which we saw in its golden prime, alive with ceremony and trade. But now we come to it in a different time, and in a different way. For over 1,000 years, Heracleion was not a place, but a ghost. It was a name whispered in the aging papyrus scrolls of ancient historians, a phantom city lost to the shifting silt of the Nile and the quiet amnesia of time. Its story was over, its book was closed, but we have learned that nothing truly vanishes forever. Sometimes, a world is not gone, only sleeping, and this is the story of a gentle awakening. For 12 centuries, the city lay in its watery grave. The mouth of the Nile, which had given it life, also provided its shroud, burying it under a thick, protective blanket of mud and sand. The world above sailed on. The empires of Rome, Byzantium, and the Ottomans rose and fell. New cities were built along the coast. The memory of Heracleion faded from a place on a map to a footnote in a text, and then to little more than a legend. Scholars argued over its existence. Was it a real city, or just another name for the nearby metropolis of Alexandria? Had the Greek historian Herodotus, who described it in such detail, simply been mistaken? The sea held its secrets, and the mud kept its silence. The city slept on, undisturbed, a complete and perfectly preserved world waiting in the darkness. The search began not with a diver, but with a new kind of explorer, one who sought to map the invisible. In the late 20th century, the French underwater archaeologist Frank Goddio and his team turned their attention to the vast, murky expanse of Abukir Bay. They knew from the scattered clues in ancient texts that a great city had once stood here, at the canopic branch of the Nile, the main gateway to Egypt for the entire Greek world. But the bay was huge, the visibility poor, and the seabed covered in centuries of sediment. To dive blindly would be like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach, so they began by listening. They used sophisticated instruments, tools that allowed them to see with sound. They sent pulses of energy down into the depths, listening to the echoes that returned. These echoes painted a picture of what lay beneath the mud, revealing the sharp, geometric lines of things that were not natural, the hard edges of quarried stone, the ghostly outlines of fallen walls. They used other instruments that could feel the faintest magnetic whisper of buried metal, the ghost of a bronze statue, the echo of a ship's anchor, or the faint signature of a hoard of gold coins. For years, they patiently scanned the bay, slowly, painstakingly, creating a map of a city no one had seen for more than a millennium. And then, after all the listening, it was time to look. A diver descends. Imagine the sensation. You leave the bright, sunlit world of the surface and enter a realm of green and hazy twilight. The water is thick with suspended silt, and visibility is limited to only a few feet. You are moving through a quiet, muffled world, your own breathing the only sound. You follow the electronic map, descending towards an anomaly, a place where the instruments have told you something lies hidden. You reach the seabed. It is a flat, featureless expanse of mud, but you have been told where to look. You begin to gently fan the sediment with your hand. The fine silt billows up like a cloud, and as it clears, something emerges from the darkness. It is not a great statue. It is something small, something simple. A piece of a ceramic bowl, its glaze still intact. And as you brush away more mud, you see it, a face. A human face carved from a block of stone, its features serene, its eyes seeming to look up at you through the watery gloom. You reach out a gloved hand and touch its cheek. It is the first human touch this object has felt in 1200 years. In that single, silent moment, the ghost city of Heracleion begins to stir from its long slumber. It is real. That first touch was the key that unlocked a lost world. In the years that followed, Goddio and his team, with infinite patience, began to unveil the city that lay sleeping beneath the mud. And what they found was beyond anyone's most ambitious dreams. They found the city's heart. Close to where the first stone face was discovered, the divers uncovered the colossal, fallen walls of the great temple of Amun-Jareb, the very place we visited in its festival prime. They swam along the lines of its massive foundations, tracing the layout of its sacred courtyards and inner sanctuaries. The scale was breathtaking. And here, lying face down in the mud as if laid to rest, was one of the most magnificent finds of all. The divers cleared the sediment from a vast shape of red granite, slowly revealing the form of a colossal statue, 16 feet tall. It was the powerful, fecund figure of Hapi, the ancient Egyptian god of the Nile's flood, the very source of the land's fertility. His face was serene, his body a symbol of abundance. He had once stood guard at the entrance to the temple, a greeter to all who arrived in Egypt. Slowly, carefully, over many hours, straps were wrapped around the stone god. And then he began to rise. He broke the surface of the water streaming from his granite form, and met the Egyptian sun for the first time in over 1,000 years. The moment was one of profound, almost mystical resonance. A god of ancient Egypt, pulled from his watery grave, resurrected into the modern world. He was not alone. Near him lay the equally colossal statues of a Ptolemaic king and queen, likely Ptolemy II and his queen Arsinoe II, depicted in the traditional style of pharaohs. They were the Greek rulers of Egypt, embracing the country's ancient religion. Their presence here a testament to the city's role as a bridge between two great cultures. And in the ruins of the temple, the city finally spoke its name. The divers found a monumental stone slab, a stele, its surface covered in perfectly preserved, deeply incised hieroglyphs. It was a decree issued by the pharaoh Nectanebo I, from around 380 BC. It was, in essence, a tax document, outlining the duties to be paid to the temple by Greek merchants trading in the port. But crucially, it named the city where it was erected. It was Phonis. And on another, identical stele, written in Greek, the city was named as Heracleion. The riddle was solved. The two cities were one and the same, an Egyptian metropolis with a Greek name, a twin identity for a cosmopolitan hub. The text, carved in stone, was the city's birth certificate, and its discovery was its rebirth in history. The exploration expanded outwards from the temple, revealing the full extent of the city's life and its trade. The divers uncovered a vast network of canals, the very watery streets we once imagined. They found the remains of homes and commercial buildings. And they found the port, the source of the city's fabulous wealth. In a basin adjacent to the temple, they discovered an ancient ship graveyard, one of the most important nautical finds in history. More than 70 ancient Egyptian ships, dating from the 6th to the 2nd centuries BC, were found deliberately sunk, their hulls and timbers perfectly preserved in the oxygen-free mud. These were not the wrecks of a great battle, but a careful, ritual scuttling, perhaps to form the foundations for a new quay or as part of a land reclamation project. Their skeletal forms, lying in neat rows on the seabed, provide an unparalleled snapshot of ancient shipbuilding. Alongside them, the divers found over 700 ancient anchors of various designs, a forest of stone and lead, testament to the thousands of ships that once crowded this harbour. They found gold coins, not just from Egypt, but from all over the Greek world, and bronze weights used by merchants, evidence of the bustling, international trade that flowed through this gateway. And everywhere there were the small, intimate traces of faith. Divers recovered beautiful bronze ritual instruments, the sistrums and ladles used by the temple priests. They found small, exquisite limestone sarcophagi that once held the mummified remains of animals, sacrificed to the gods. And they found hundreds of small, lead models of boats, offerings left by sailors praying for a safe voyage, each one a tiny metallic prayer, its purpose still palpable after so many centuries. Gold jewelry, delicate imported Greek ceramics, amulets to ward off evil. Bit by bit, the material culture of a living, breathing city was brought back to the light. As the divers mapped the city, they also uncovered the silent story of its fall. The evidence was all around them. The heaviest structures, the temple and its colossal statues, were found at the very center and the lowest point of a large, bowl-shaped depression in the seabed. The ground beneath the temple had clearly given way. The ruins were not scattered as if by an explosion, but lay in a jumbled, yet coherent state, as if the buildings had slid and slumped, rather than shattered. The great stone blocks of the temple walls had fallen like dominoes. This was the physical proof of the story we pieced together from geology. The city, built on soft, unstable river silt, had been the author of its own demise. The sheer weight of its magnificent stone heart had compressed the ground beneath it for centuries. Then, a trigger, an earthquake, a major flood, caused the waterlogged soil to liquefy. The city did not just sink. It slumped into its own footprint, a slow, syrupy, graceful slide into the mud that had once been its foundation. To dive in Heracleion today is to swim through a dream. You float over fallen columns, their hieroglyphs as sharp as the day they were carved. You drift past a sphinx, its face half buried in the sand, its expression one of eternal, regal calm. You glide through the ghostly armada of the ship graveyard, their wooden ribs like the skeletons of great leviathans. It is a world of profound silence, a city at peace. The work of the archaeologists is not an excavation in the traditional sense. It is a gentle conversation with a lost world. Each artifact brought to the surface is a word, a phrase, in a story that is slowly being retold. Heracleion, the ghost, the legend, has returned to the world of the living, not as a city of people, but as a city of memory. It slept for 12 centuries in the dark, quiet mud, and now its story is once more being told, a wondrous, gentle whisper from the deep. The world of the living is a place of sharp edges, of bright light and loud sounds, but we are leaving that world behind now. We are sinking, not into the churning chaos of a city's fall, but into a silence that is deeper, older, and more profound. We are descending through the cold, grey waters of the North Sea, leaving the restless surface far above. Down here, the light fades to a dim, perpetual twilight. The water is still and immensely heavy. The pressure is immense. This is a world of quiet, of slowness, of deep time. We have come to visit the sleeping memory of Doggerland, the great lost country of the north. And we have come to understand a simple, powerful truth. The sea does not destroy, it remembers. Above us, on the surface, the North Sea can be a place of turmoil. It is a working sea, a slate-grey expanse crossed by fishing trawlers, cargo ships and ferries, its waves whipped into a cold froth by the relentless wind. It seems to the casual eye to be an empty space between lands, a void on the map. But this is an illusion. The surface is merely a veil. The waves are the slow, rhythmic breaths of a sleeping world. Beneath this turbulent skin lies a realm of perfect stillness, a kingdom of silt and sand that holds a secret history in its cold embrace. To understand this place, you must learn to listen to its silence, and to read the stories that are written not in ink, but in bone and stone and pollen. For centuries, the first whispers from this forgotten world came not from scientists or historians, but from fishermen. Imagine a trawler, its engine a steady, throbbing drone against the cry of the gules. It drags its heavy nets, the great beam trawl scraping along the seabed, miles from any shore and hundreds of feet below the surface. The fishermen are looking for cod, for haddock, for plaice. They haul their nets, the winches groaning under the immense weight. The catch spills onto the deck in a silvery, writhing cascade of life. But sometimes, tangled in the nets, amidst the fish and the seaweed, there is something else. Something dark, heavy, and ancient. It is a bone, but a bone of impossible size. A thick, curving tusk, stained the color of peat, its elegant shape belonging to no creature of the modern world. It is the tusk of a mammoth. Another time, the nets bring up a section of a jawbone, its teeth as large as a man's fist, the unmistakable fossil of a woolly rhinoceros. Or most spectacular of all, a huge, tangled mass of antlers, a crown belonging to the giant deer Megaloceros, its vast span wider than a man is tall. For generations, these were curiosities, marvels, monsters from the deep. The fishermen called the area the Dogger, after the old Dutch word for a fishing boat, and the finds from this bank were strange and plentiful. These were not the bones of sea creatures. They were the remains of a great terrestrial ecosystem, and northern Serengeti teeming with megafauna. Each bone brought to the surface was a dispatch from a lost world, a tangible piece of evidence that this cold sea was once a wide, green plain, where colossal beasts grazed and hunted. The fishermen were the first, accidental archaeologists of Doggerland, their nets the first tools to pull memories from the deep. The sea was not a void, it was a vast, submerged pasture, and it was giving up the ghosts of its former inhabitants. But the story became deeper, more personal, more human. On a day in 1931, a skipper named Pilgrim on the trawler Kalinda was fishing on the Lemon and Ower Bank, a shallow area of the Dogger. When he hauled his nets, he found, along with the fish, a large, dark lump of compressed peat, the vegetative remains of an ancient marshland. This in itself was not unusual. But as he was about to discard it, he saw something embedded within it. It was a piece of antler, about 8 inches long, dark and polished by time. It was not a random fragment, it had been shaped. One end was worked to a sharp point, and along one side, a series of vicious, backward-facing barbs had been meticulously carved. Near the base, a small, neat hole had been drilled. It was a harpoon head, a weapon, a tool of breathtaking sophistication and deadly beauty. It was unmistakably the work of a human hand. Hold this object in your mind's eye. Feel its weight, its strange, cold smoothness. This is not just a tool, it is a thought, frozen in time. The mind that conceived this object knew the physics of the hunt. It understood that the barbs would hold the point fast in the flesh of a struggling fish or seal. It knew that a line, threaded through the hole, would connect the hunter to his prey. This object is a testament to a complex culture, to language, to teaching, to a deep and intimate knowledge of the natural world. And it was found here, in the middle of the North Sea. With this single discovery, the entire meaning of the landscape changed. The bones of the mammoths told of a lost world of animals, but the Lemon and Ower Point told of a lost world of people. It was the first human fingerprint from Doggerland, a definitive sign that our own ancestors had walked this drowned land, had hunted its rivers, and had built their lives on ground that now lies in perpetual darkness. The sea had not just preserved the bones of beasts, it had preserved the intimate signature of a human soul. This single artifact opened the floodgates. Once archaeologists knew what to look for, and where, the story began to come into focus. But how to map a world that is completely invisible? The answer came, ironically, from the very industries that work the modern sea. Oil and gas companies, in their search for resources, had surveyed the North Sea floor with technologies of incredible power. They used seismic reflection, sending powerful waves of sound down through the water, through the layers of sand and silt, to the bedrock below. By reading the echoes, they could create a three-dimensional map of the subterranean landscape. They were looking for geological traps that might hold oil, but in the process, they created an ultrasound image of a buried world. And what these maps revealed was astounding. It was not a flat, featureless plain. It was a landscape of breathtaking complexity and detail, a fossil of a country. On their computer screens, scientists could now see the world as it was 10,000 years ago. They could trace the winding, meandering channels of Doggerland's great rivers, the ancestors of the Thames, the Rhine, and the Elbe, which once converged here in a vast watershed. They could see the gentle, sloping outlines of hills, and the distinct, circular shapes of kettle lakes, formed by melting blocks of glacial ice. They could identify the shores of a vast, central freshwater lake, larger than any in Britain today. They could map the deltas, the estuaries, the coastal lagoons, and the barrier islands of the ancient coastline. It was all there, a perfect and complete geography, held in suspension beneath the sea. The sea had not erased the landscape. It had made a perfect cast of it, preserving its every feature under a protective blanket of sediment. The memory of the land was not gone, it was simply recorded in a different medium. With this map, the search could become more precise. Scientists could now go to the places where people would have most likely lived. Along the riverbanks, on the shores of the Great Lake, in the sheltered estuaries. From the decks of research vessels, they sent down machines that could drill deep into the seabed, pulling up long, cylindrical cores of sediment. And these cores are perhaps the most profound memory of all. Each one is a library of time, a vertical history book whose pages are the successive layers of mud, sand, silt, and peat. To look at one of these cores is to look back through the millennia, and what they find inside is the very essence of the lost world. They find microscopic grains of pollen, each one a tiny, almost indestructible key to the ancient flora. In the lower, older layers, there is the pollen of a cold, open tundra. Higher up, as the climate warmed, they find the pollen of vast pine and birch forests. And higher still, the pollen of a dense, mature woodland of hazel, oak, and elm. They can reconstruct the ancient forests, tree by tree. They find the tiny, iridescent wing cases of beetles, the delicate shells of freshwater snails, and the bones of fish and birds. allowing them to rebuild the entire food web. And nestled amongst these natural layers, they find the human traces. They find layers of charcoal, the ghostly remains of 1,000 campfires where families once gathered for warmth and safety. They find tiny, sharp flakes of flint, the debris from making tools. They find the cracked and burnt shells of hazelnuts, the remnants of a meal eaten 10,000 years ago. To hold a piece of this sediment core in your hand is an experience of profound connection. To crumble the dark, peaty earth is to touch the soil of an ancient forest floor. To smell its rich, organic scent is to breathe the air of a world that has been without air for 8,000 years. This is the deepest memory of Doggerland, held not just in the great bones or the beautiful tools, but in the very substance of the land itself. The sea, by burying it, protected it from the wind, the rain, and the plough that have erased so much of our history on the dry land above. So we see now that the sea does not destroy, it archives, it curates, it remembers. It has held the mammoth's tusk and the hunter's spear point in the same cold, quiet embrace. It has remembered the course of every river and the slope of every hill. It has kept a library of the ancient pollens and a ledger of the ancient hearths. The sleep of Doggerland is not the empty sleep of death. It is the deep, dream-filled sleep of preservation. The lives that were lived there are not truly gone, because the evidence of them is all around us, waiting in the deep. Their stories are told by the fisherman's strange catch, by the scientist's seismic maps, and by the layers of mud in a plastic tube. And when we listen to these quiet stories, we feel a sense of peace. We understand that our own world is just as transient, that our own cities are just as fragile, but we also understand that nothing is ever truly lost. It is only transformed. It is only taken into the great, slow, patient memory of the earth and the sea, where it waits, in the deep, quiet darkness, for a time when its story can be told again. The journey is ending. The last light is fading from the sky, and the deep, quiet darkness of the night begins to settle. We have traveled far together, across millennia and over sunken shores. We have walked the streets of cities that now lie in silence, their market squares and temple courtyards known only to the slow, gentle currents of the sea. We have listened for the whispers of these forgotten worlds, and now, as we prepare for our own journey into the quiet land of sleep, we gather those whispers together one last time. We have come to the final shore, a place of reflection, to ask what truly remains when a city, a civilization, a world, sinks beneath the waves. Listen, can you hear it? It is the sound that has been with us from the very beginning. The soft, rhythmic sigh of the ocean. It is the oldest sound in the world, the planet's own lullaby. Tonight it sounds different. It is not just the sound of water on sand. It is an echo chamber, a vast repository of memory. In each wave that breaks, you can hear the faintest echo of a story. Listen closely, and you can almost hear the gentle lapping of the Aegean against the stone quays of Pavlopetri, and catch the scent of thyme on the sea breeze. Listen again, and it becomes the sound of the great Nile flowing out into the Mediterranean, carrying the prayers from the golden barges of Heracleion. Let the sound deepen, and it is the resonant wash of the Arabian Sea against the sacred ghats of Dwarka, where 1,000 lamps once floated like scattered stars on the tide. Let it become a sudden, sharp silence, and it is the moment after the great wave washed over Port Royal, leaving only the quiet of the water. And let it become a vast, deep and ancient murmur, and it is the sound of the North Sea, guarding the misty, silent plains of Doggerland. The sea holds all of these stories. It holds them for us. What is it that remains? In the end, what is the legacy of a sunken world? Each of our cities left behind a different kind of ghost, a different testament to its life. At Pavlopetri, what remains is the memory of community. The sea did not preserve great monuments or golden treasures, but something more intimate and perhaps more profound, the blueprint of a life lived together. Swimming over its submerged streets is like looking at a ghostly town plan. You can trace the path a potter took from his home to his workshop, or the way neighbors gathered in a shared courtyard. The legacy of Pavlopetri is written in the simple language of foundation stones, a quiet reminder that the essence of any city is not its grandeur, but the human connections that it shelters. At Heracleion, what remains is a memory of faith and power. Here, the sea preserved the instruments of communion with the divine, the colossal statues of gods and pharaohs, their serene faces staring out from the deep, speak of a civilization that sought to manifest its beliefs in eternal stone. The great steels, their hieroglyphs spelling out the laws of gods and men, are the memory of order and authority. Heracleion's legacy is one of majesty, a world where human life was played out on a grand stage, with the gods as its primary audience. The mud of the Nile did not just swallow a city, it archived a theology, preserving the very image of the gods the city sought to honor. At Dwarka, the memory is different again. It is a story woven from myth and tangible reality. What remains are not just the massive stone blocks of a sea wall or the heavy anchors of ancient ships, but the powerful resonance of a sacred scripture. Here, the discoveries of the archaeologists do not create a story. They illuminate one that has been told for thousands of years. The sea holds a memory where faith is not a relic, but a living guide. The submerged stones of Dwarka are a testament to the power of stories, a suggestion that the most enduring things we build are not walls, but the beliefs that give them meaning. At Port Royal, the memory is one of shocking immediacy. It is the memory of a single moment, a snapshot of catastrophe. What remains is a city frozen at the instant of its death. A pocket watch, its hands stopped at 11:43. A row of buildings, slumped into the sea as if in a drunken stupor. A hoard of pirate silver, spilled across the seabed, its value rendered meaningless in an instant. Port Royal's legacy is a cautionary tale, a stark and dramatic reminder of the fragility of human ambition. The sea preserved not a culture in its prime, but the very second of its violent end, a memory of chaos sealed in time. And in the deep, cold silence of the North Sea, the memory of Doggerland is the most ancient and elemental of all. It is a memory written not in stone or gold, but in the very fabric of the earth. What remains is the pollen of a lost forest, the bones of a mammoth, the faint trace of charcoal from a hunter's fire. The legacy of Doggerland is the memory of our own deepest origins, of a time when humanity lived not in opposition to nature, but as a seamless part of it. The sea here did not just preserve a culture. It preserved an entire ecosystem, a whole way of being. It is a memory that reminds us that before we built the first city, we first had to learn to listen to the land. It is a curious and beautiful paradox that the very force that seems to cause this forgetting is also the greatest agent of remembrance. The sea takes these worlds from us, swallowing them in water and time. But in return for this loss, it offers the gift of perfect preservation. Had these cities remained on the surface, they would have been eroded by wind and rain, plundered for their stone, built over by new generations, their stories blurred and erased by the ceaseless activity of the living world. The surface is a place of decay, but the deep sea is an archive. In its cold, dark, oxygen-poor depths, time itself seems to slow down. The mud and silt that bury these cities become a perfect seal, protecting the most delicate of artifacts from the ravages of the ages. The sea does not destroy, it embraces. It takes these worlds into its deep, quiet hold and keeps them safe, waiting patiently until we are ready to find them again. And the sea gives us another gift, the gift of perspective. When we find these cities, we see them with a sense of wonder and humility that we can rarely feel for the world we inhabit. They teach us that our own time, our own civilization, with all its frantic urgency and seeming permanence, is just one more layer, one more story that will one day be covered over. This is not a frightening thought. It is a liberating one. It allows us to see the beauty in the ephemeral, to understand that life's meaning is not found in its permanence, but in its precious, fleeting vibrancy. The cities are gone, but the memory of their lives, of the potter, the priest, the pilgrim, the pirate, the hunter, is what truly endures. And now, it is time to turn from these outer worlds to the inner world of your own self. Just as the sea holds the memory of the earth, you hold the memory of the sea within you. The water that makes up your body has the same saline tang as the ancient oceans where life first began. The rhythm of your breathing is like the rhythm of the tides, a slow, steady, peaceful rise and fall. You are not separate from this great, cyclical story of rising and falling, of waking and sleeping. You are a part of it, so now let go. Let the thoughts and worries of the waking day become like ancient cities. Do not fight them, do not struggle with them. Simply let them sink. Let them drift down, gently, into the deep, quiet waters of your own inner sea. Entrust them to the silence. The sea will hold them for you. It will keep them safe until morning. Just as the great temples of Heracleion settled into the soft, welcoming mud, let your body settle into the surface that supports you. Feel your own weight, the gentle pull of gravity, and surrender to it. Let go of the need to hold on. There is nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, no one you need to become. There is only this moment, this breath, this slow, peaceful descent. Imagine the gentle tide of sleep rising to meet you. It is not a fall into darkness, but a floating on a deep and peaceful current. Let it take you. Let it carry you out from the shore of wakefulness, out into the vast, calm ocean of rest. Nothing is ever truly lost. Not a city, not a story, not a thought, not a dream. Everything is simply transformed, held in the great, quiet memory of the universe. And you too are held. You are safe. You are part of this eternal, beautiful, and peaceful cycle. And now, it is time to rest. It is time to let the tide carry you away. It is time to sleep. Sleep now, sleep deep.